Hi, I'm Johnny from ultimatepapermache.com, and I got something kind of different today, maybe even just slightly weird. I've been playing around with these lately. It's basically a face. I'm calling it a just for fun face, or I don't know what we could call it. But basically what happened, and the reason I got started with this, I was actually doing a clay sculpture, using photographs and everything, and trying to get everything in the right place, and you know, all the shapes right and stuff. And I was getting a little bit frustrated with it, but when I pulled a lump of clay out of the bag, and I was going to add some more things to my sculpture, and I looked at that lump of clay, and there was already a mouth and kind of a start of a nose on it. And I thought, you know, that'd be an awful lot more fun. Why don't I just play with that instead of that other thing that really wasn't enjoying all that much? And it turned into a really cool little face. That particular lump already had the mouth and nose on it and kind of a place for the eyes, so just one lump was enough. And then I tried doing this one and just pulled out another lump of clay. I was looking around, I couldn't find a face on it, so I just folded it over and kind of squished it around, and then all of a sudden there was a mouth there. And I used that mouth as the kind of the foundation for a new face. Got a little carried away with the nose. I don't know how he got such a weird nose. I don't know how that happened. But basically I'm just, you know, playing with it. And I'll go ahead and show you the process. There's no rules, there's no way to do it, so I'm not going to like give you instructions or anything. You can go ahead and watch the film as it goes. But when I was doing this the very first time, it was so much fun, and I was really noticing that it was more enjoyable than doing it the other way, trying to get everything right. This way, there's no way to get it right. It's not going to turn out looking like anybody. This particular one I'm working on here for this video doesn't look entirely human even. It's close, but not quite right. And I think that's part of the fun of it. It reminded me of something that happened back in Oregon when I was still living there. I think it was about 10 years ago. A little girl and her family moved in right next door to me, and she saw that I was sculpting with paper mache, and she really wanted to try it. She really wanted to do that really bad. She was, it was a summer between first and second grade for her, so she was about 7 or 8 years old. So she and her friend got permission from their parents to come over, and we did a little class at my kitchen table. And we were going to be making a chicken, a paper mache chicken. And I admit, I don't know how to teach art to kids. It's just not something I've ever done. I have no training in it whatsoever. So the fact that neither one of those little kids came up with something that actually looked like a chicken, I take full responsibility for that. I really didn't know how to help them do that part. I just really didn't know quite what I was doing. But they had just so much fun with it anyway, especially my neighbor's kid. She was so happy with it. But all the time that she was working on her chicken and putting the paper strips and paste on there, and you know, just getting it in her hair and everywhere else, and just doing all the fun stuff that you get out of paper mache when you're a kid, all the time that she was doing it, she was yapping. She just never stopped talking. She wasn't really talking to anybody. I think she was just saying whatever came in her head. And what she was saying is, my mother told me that I'm never going to be an artist. I'm really not any good at this. I don't have any talent whatsoever. She might have used slightly different words, but that was basically what she was saying. And that really bothered me for a long time. I thought about that over the years. It just didn't seem right. I know her mom was hardly all that much older than the little girl was, and she was a good mother in most respects, and just happened to have said something that bothered the little girl a lot because she enjoyed art so much. But even though she accepted her mother's judgment about her ability, it didn't stop her from doing it anyway because she had so much fun. And hopefully she's still doing that. Like I said, it was about 10 years ago. She's probably graduating from high school now. And whether or not she was able to continue to create things or not, in spite of all that judgment, I don't know. Most of us don't, I'm afraid. And I know that because I get so many emails from people, and these folks who write to me are almost always about my age or older, and they tell me that when they read my book, How to Make Animal Sculptures with Paper Mache Clay, it's almost always that one, because that's a full course, starting from something easy and going all the way through so that you can really feel competent in sculpting an animal by the time you've done all of the projects in the book. And I think that's the reason why that one really triggers this one particular response from so many people. And that is that these folks are telling me that they're so glad that I made it look easy enough that they could feel confident or courageous even enough to sit down and create something. And they're saying that it actually changed their life. Not necessarily because they now have things to put around their house that are really pretty or nice things to give away for presents. That's not really what they're saying. They're saying that they were depressed before. They didn't feel good. And being able to create something, just having that courage to create something, lifted their spirits so much, and that everything seems to change. And I know that that has to be true, and certainly wasn't my intention. I wasn't thinking, oh boy, I'm going to change the world when I write this book about paper mache clay and animals. That didn't cross my mind. But now that I keep getting those emails, like 2 or 3 a month, I realize it has to be true, because how would I feel if I didn't create things all the time? It would not be good, seriously, because I need that focus. It's almost like when you're focused on a creative project, you're not thinking about anything else. It's almost like you're giving your brain a rest from all the other things that you could be thinking about, all the problems that aren't solvable. And that total focus that you have on one thing is just invigorating. It makes it just a huge difference to the way we feel. And I suspect, I can't prove this in any way, but I suspect that during that moment when we're totally focused, in the zone, I'll bet that we're getting the same feel-good brain chemicals that runners get. Can't prove it, haven't done the research, but why else would it feel so good? And the reason I thought about when I was making my first little accidental face here was because I had just a few minutes before been doing something that I wasn't in that zone. It wasn't moving the way I wanted it to. It really wasn't. I wasn't getting it. Not that I wasn't getting the portrait, and it was okay, but I wasn't getting that energizing, I don't know what to call it. I just stuck with it. But you know what, when you're feeling it, you know it, if you pay attention to it. And usually it just passes by, we do it, and we get really excited when the item is done. And so we're feeling good, and we think we're feeling good because of the thing we made. But that little girl back in Oregon knew that that really wasn't the big point. For her, the point was making it, not necessarily getting it done, not necessarily getting it right, but just doing it. And one of the reasons that I think this guy reminded me so much of that little girl back in Oregon, and all those emails that I get from so many people my age, is that this has no way of being right. There's no expectation at all. I'm just kind of letting the clay do most of the work. In this particular one, I had to add a nose because it didn't have one, and I had to change the nose around after I stuck it on there in order to make it at least halfway nose-like. You had to get some eyeballs. I had to try to make the eyes in the right place and get them both more or less the right size. But there was no expectation going in because I didn't know what was going to be on that ball of clay when I crumpled it up. And that was where I started, so there was just no preconception at all. Now I've got a whole shelf full of books on how to sculpt the face. I think I've got every single one of them except the latest one. I think it's called How to Sculpt Characters. It's the fellow's making them out of monster clay. The only reason I didn't buy it is because I don't like monster clay. And even though I have all those books, I very, very rarely actually sculpt a face, even though I've been very interested in doing it for a really long time. And I don't do it because Those books are so precise, and they've got so much information in them about all of the muscles and all the skull shapes and all these things that you're supposed to get right. And I guess it just doesn't fit with the way I like to sculpt. It's not something that really feels good to me. This guy felt good because there's no way to get it right. There's also no way to expect it to be anything in particular, and now that he's done, there's nothing to really do with him. I guess I can. It's made out of WED clay, which is not permanent. It's not fireable. It's just something, it feels really good when you're working with it, but if I wanted to save him, I'm going to have to make a mold and cast it in plaster, because this fellow sitting here is not a permanent piece of art. I could reproduce it, and I might do that. I do have the materials for making a mold, and I might do that with this guy, but it's not the expectation. If I didn't really like him, if he didn't feel like, oh yeah, okay, I want to live with that guy, I would just squinch him up and throw him back in the bag and make another one, because there's no real use for him at all. There's no expectation. So if you happen to be someone who has also been interested in sculpting faces like I have for a really long time, but you kind of don't do it because it just looks too complicated, give this a try. This really is fun. I do recommend the WED clay rather than an oil-based modeling clay, just because the water-based clay, like I'm using, moves so quickly. You can, and it feels really good on your hands if you don't mind getting your hands dirty. It's just a really tactile experience, and it is a lot of fun. And the fact that it's not permanent kind of, for me, it helps it be even more fun. It's just all about the experience rather than what's going to be the result when it's all done. Like I said, I know it's a little weird, but I'm enjoying it, and I thought I would share it with you guys. Let me know what you think. If you're not interested in doing faces in clay, then go ahead and look at my channel, because I got tons of stuff out there. Subscribe for sure. I guess you're supposed to hit the little bell thing too. I'm a couple of years late figuring that out. Go ahead and do that too. And then come on over and visit me at Ultimate Paper Mache and let me know what you think of this whole, what are we going to call it? How about accidental faces? What do you think? Just for fun faces? I don't know. Let me know. Come visit me, ultimatepapermache.com.